The vastness of space stretched endlessly in all directions as the alien fleet entered the solar system. Their ships emerged from the shadows like a swarm of locusts, each one massive and menacing. They were the Xar Khan, a ruthless race that had conquered countless worlds with ease. Their fleet was designed for domination. Their technology, far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Earth had been monitoring their movement for months, but no one had truly believed the Xar Khan would come here. The first salvo from the alien warships cut through the silence of space. The blast struck the Earth's defense grid, sending shockwaves of devastation across the planet. Major cities erupted into chaos as the first of many strikes left entire populations reeling. The power grid collapsed, communications went dark, and panic spread like wildfire. People didn't know what was happening. All they knew was that the sky had turned red and fire rained down from above. The world was under attack. But deep in the shadows beyond the prying eyes of the alien invaders, humanity had been preparing for this day. The Vigilance, a ship unlike any the world had ever seen. It was built in secret by the finest minds of humanity. Its design, based on centuries of scientific research and years of development, it was a warship, but also a symbol of human ingenuity. The Vigilance was humanity's last line of defense, a sleek and powerful craft capable of turning the tide in an impossible war. Aboard the Vigilance, Captain Tessa Grant stood in the command center, her mind focused and sharp, her crew working with quiet determination around her. They had trained for years for this moment, knowing that they would one day face an enemy far beyond their comprehension. The crew was a mix of soldiers, engineers, scientists, and strategists, all chosen for their unique abilities. The ship was a living, breathing entity powered by a blend of artificial intelligence and human skill. The AI, called Solace, was connected to every system on board, analyzing threats and suggesting countermeasures in real time. But it was the human minds that made the ship truly dangerous. They understood tactics and strategy like no other race in the galaxy. They had the will to survive no matter the cost. As the alien ships began their bombardment, Captain Grant calmly assessed the situation, her voice steady as she gave the orders to engage. Vigilance was equipped with cutting-edge stealth technology that allowed it to remain undetected until it was too late. She knew the element of surprise was their greatest weapon, and she was determined to make it count. The ship powered up its engines and silently moved into position within the heart of the alien fleet. The first shot was fired not by the aliens, but by humanity. It was a calculated strike. The Vigilance launched a precise torpedo that ripped through the hull of the nearest Xar Khan warship. A massive explosion rocked the alien ship as it was torn apart. The impact sent a ripple of shock through the alien fleet. They hadn't anticipated this kind of resistance. The humans were fighting back. They were far from the helpless prey the Xar Khan had assumed they would be. Captain Grant felt the first flicker of hope. It was just a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, and it meant that humanity was ready to show the aliens that they were not so easily conquered. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and humanity was about to prove that it would not go down without a fight. The Xar Khan fleet was in disarray after the surprise attack. The first strike from the Vigilance had crippled their warship, and now the alien commanders were scrambling to regroup their forces. Captain Grant could feel the shift in momentum as the Vigilance prepared for its next move. The ship moved silently through the void of space with its advanced cloaking technology, making it invisible to the alien sensors. The crew was ready for the next phase of the plan. They knew the fight had only just begun, but they had taken the first step toward turning the tide. Aboard the Vigilance, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Captain Grant stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. As the alien fleet began to reorganize, she knew that this was a crucial moment. They had a limited window of opportunity, and if they hesitated even for a moment, the Xar Khan would retaliate with full force. The ship's eye, Solace, processed the information with lightning speed, pinpointing the alien ships and calculating the optimal strike points. The crew was working in perfect harmony, each person knowing their role in this delicate operation. Without a word, Captain Grant gave the order, and the Vigilance burst from its hiding place. Like a predator emerging from the shadows, the sudden appearance of the human warship sent waves of shock through the alien fleet. They hadn't expected the humans to be able to move so quickly or with such deadly precision. In an instant, the Vigilance launched a barrage of missiles at the nearest alien warships. The projectiles hit with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through the alien defenses. The Vigilance then fired its primary weapon, a concentrated energy beam that sliced through the hull of an enemy ship as if it were paper. The alien vessels were no match for the human warship's firepower, and soon the first wave of attackers was reduced to debris. But the Xar Khan were not easily deterred, and they were quick to regroup, sending in reinforcements from the back of the fleet. Massive destroyers and heavily armored cruisers began to move toward the Vigilance, intent on ending the battle before it could escalate any further. The humans were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of surprise and speed. The Vigilance was a sleek and nimble ship capable of evading the heavier alien vessels with ease. Captain Grant ordered a series of evasive maneuvers designed to confuse the enemy and give her crew the time they needed to launch another devastating counteroffensive. The battle unfolded like a deadly dance, the Vigilance darting through space as alien ships fired in vain, attempting to hit the elusive warship. The crew of the Vigilance worked as one machine, executing each command with perfect precision. The AI Solace constantly updated the ship's movements, calculating every angle, every possible trajectory. The Vigilance was a master of space combat, weaving between the enemy's attacks and striking back with overwhelming force. Every strike felt like a declaration humanity was not so easily defeated. Captain Grant watched with satisfaction as the alien forces faltered under the relentless human assault. The first wave of enemy warships was broken apart, and the alien commanders began to hesitate. They had underestimated humanity's will to fight, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. But Captain Grant knew better than to assume victory. She understood that the battle had only begun. The Vigilance had dealt the aliens a blow, but the war was far from over, and much more danger lay ahead. But for now, humanity had won a small victory, and it was a victory that would be remembered as the moment when the human warship first hunted its prey in the stars. The Xar Khan fleet was reeling from the surprise attack, but they were far from defeated. Captain Grant knew that the first victory was only the beginning. The aliens were nothing if not relentless. Their warships were massive and heavily armed, but they had no idea just how determined humanity was to protect its home planet. The Xar Khan would not let the Vigilance's success go unanswered, and soon enough, a massive counterattack began to take shape. The alien fleet regrouped quickly after their initial losses. Their commanders, proud and accustomed to overwhelming dominance, now had a new focus. The Vigilance must be destroyed before it could inflict any more damage to their forces. Massive reinforcements began to pour in from the far reaches of their fleet. Hundreds of alien ships, some as large as entire cities, began their advance toward Earth. Their sleek and deadly designs made them appear unstoppable, their weaponry capable of reducing any human ship to rubble in moments. Captain Grant stared at the tactical display as the new wave of enemies approached with terrifying speed. She didn't flinch. The Vigilance was ready. As the alien forces closed in, the Vigilance powered up its engines and prepared for another round of hit-and-run tactics. Captain Grant ordered the crew to execute a series of evasive maneuvers designed to confuse the enemy and allow for another devastating assault. The Vigilance was faster and more agile than anything the aliens had ever encountered, and that advantage would be used to its fullest. The ship darted from one position to another, using nearby asteroids and space debris to its advantage. The aliens, slow and lumbering in comparison, struggled to get a lock on their target. However, it became clear that the alien fleet was learning from its mistakes. They adjusted their tactics to counter the Vigilance's superior speed and began coordinating their firepower in ways the human ship had not yet encountered. The larger warships began firing in unison, creating a wall of energy blasts that would overwhelm any ship caught in their sights. The Vigilance narrowly dodged several shots, but Captain Grant could feel the pressure mounting. Each attack was growing closer, each move more desperate than the last. The aliens were adapting quickly, and their patience was running thin. Sensing an opportunity, Captain Grant ordered a bold maneuver. The Vigilance would move directly into the heart of the alien formation, drawing the enemy's fire and creating a distraction long enough for the crew to deliver a fatal blow to the enemy flagship. It was a dangerous plan, but the only one with any hope of success. The ship accelerated toward the alien formation at full speed, its engines roaring as it dove into the heart of the oncoming enemy ships. The plan worked better than anticipated. The aliens, eager to take down the Vigilance, focused all of their firepower on it, leaving the rest of the human fleet in a much safer position. As the Vigilance flew through the storm of incoming energy blasts, Captain Grant smiled grimly as her ship's advanced shielding absorbed the onslaught. Though the ship shook violently under the barrage, it held strong. The Vigilance fired its weapons in quick succession, striking the alien flagship in a flurry of missiles and energy beams. The flagship's shields flickered and then collapsed under the sheer intensity of the human firepower. With a final devastating shot, the flagship exploded in a brilliant burst of light. But the alien fleet was not done yet. Despite the loss of their flagship, the Xar Khan were determined to see the Vigilance destroyed. They sent in even more warships, including their dreaded dreadnoughts, massive floating fortresses with nearly impenetrable armor and firepower that could level entire cities. But the Vigilance was not finished yet. Either Captain Grant knew that every fight, no matter how impossible, was an opportunity for humanity to show its strength. It was time to get creative once more. The Vigilance was about to bring the fight to the aliens in a way they never expected. The battle was far from over. The Vigilance had just delivered a crushing blow to the alien flagship, but the Xar Khan were relentless, and now they were sending their most terrifying weapons into the fray. The dreadnoughts arrived in force. These behemoths of war were almost impervious to most conventional weapons. Their sheer size and firepower made them a nearly unstoppable force of nature. Their primary weapon was an energy beam capable of vaporizing entire fleets with a single shot, and it was aimed directly at Earth. The stakes had never been higher. As Captain Grant watched the approaching dreadnoughts on the tactical display, she knew the fate of humanity was in the balance. The Vigilance was outmatched in terms of raw firepower. The dreadnoughts were too strong, too well armed, and too numerous, but Captain Grant was not the type to give up without a fight. She had a secret weapon, one she had been saving for just this moment. Hidden deep within the Vigilance was a prototype device, a planetary shield generator designed to block the devastating energy beams of the dreadnoughts. It was humanity's last hope, but it came with a dangerous flaw. The shield generator was experimental and only had enough power to block a limited number of shots. The Vigilance would need to get close to the dreadnoughts and activate the shield before it was too late. Captain Grant didn't hesitate. She issued the command to move the Vigilance into position. The crew sprang into action, their hands moving swiftly over controls as they prepared for the dangerous maneuver. The ship's eye solace adjusted the calculations, guiding the ship through a maze of debris and enemy fire to get within striking distance of the dreadnoughts. The closer the Vigilance got to the dreadnoughts, the more intense the battle became. Alien ships swarmed around the human warship, firing relentlessly as if hoping to overwhelm it with sheer numbers. But Captain Grant remained calm, her eyes locked on the advancing dreadnoughts ahead. The Vigilance had to get within range of their energy beams to activate the shield generator in time. Just as the dreadnoughts prepared to fire their energy weapons, Captain Grant ordered the ship to power up the shield generator. The Vigilance shuddered as the massive device activated its energy shield, flaring into life and enveloping the ship in a shimmering dome of light. The first blast from the dreadnoughts hit the shield with an enormous shockwave that rocked the Vigilance to its core, but the shield held strong. The second shot came seconds later, but again it was absorbed by the energy shield. This time, with even more intensity, the ship groaned under the strain, but Captain Grant refused to relent. As long as the shield held, the Vigilance could take another shot. With the shield in place, the crew of the Vigilance launched a counterattack. Captain Grant gave the order to fire at the nearest dreadnought. The Vigilance unleashed everything it had in a flurry of energy beams and missiles. The dreadnought took direct hits to its shields, causing them to flicker and collapse with a final barrage. The Vigilance blasted through the weakened defenses of the enemy ship and detonated its core. The dreadnought exploded in a brilliant burst of fire and debris. The shockwave rattled the Vigilance, but the ship held steady. The victory was hard-earned, but it was clear that humanity was no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting to win. The aliens had underestimated the human spirit, and they were beginning to realize that Earth was not the easy target they had assumed it would be. But there was no time to celebrate. The Vigilance still had its work cut out for it, as more dreadnoughts continued to close in. Captain Grant knew that even with the shield, the fight was far from over. The Xarkhan were relentless, and this battle was only one small part of a much larger war. The battle raged on as the Vigilance continued to face wave after wave of enemy forces. The dreadnoughts were still a formidable threat, but now the alien fleet was losing its grip. The victory against the first dreadnought had given humanity a renewed sense of confidence and determination, but Captain Grant knew they could not afford to rest for long. The Vigilance was already battered from the earlier clashes, and the alien fleet was growing more desperate by the minute. The Xarkhan commanders, unable to ignore the humiliation of their losses, ordered a full-scale retaliation against Earth. This time, however, they would not send in their heavy artillery or massive dreadnoughts. Instead, they unleashed their most fearsome weapon yet. An army of elite strike forces. The aliens were sending in their most skilled warriors, automated drones, and energy-weaponized warships designed to take down the Vigilance once and for all. Captain Grant stood in the command center of the Vigilance, her eyes scanning the incoming data from the ship's sensors. She knew that the situation was about to escalate in ways they hadn't anticipated. The elite strike forces were unlike any opponent the crew had faced before. These warriors were genetically engineered for speed, strength, and brutality. Their drones were faster than anything humanity had encountered, and their warships were equipped with cloaking devices that could make them nearly invisible to the ship's sensors. But the Vigilance was ready. Captain Grant ordered the crew to prepare for a full offensive. They were going to hunt the aliens down before they could do any more damage. The Vigilance would be the predator, and the alien forces would be the prey. The ship powered up its weapons as it moved silently through the vastness of space. The crew worked like a well-oiled machine, each member knowing exactly what needed to be done. The Vigilance's eye solace was calculating every move, predicting where the alien forces would strike next and how they could outmaneuver them. Captain Grant issued the order to scatter the ship's forces, using the Vigilance's superior speed to strike from multiple angles at once. The first wave of the alien strike forces came in hard, their drones weaving through space like swarming locusts as they fired at the Vigilance from all directions. But the human ship was faster and more agile. The Vigilance darted in and out of the incoming fire, using nearby asteroids and debris as cover. The elite warriors followed, but they struggled to land a direct hit. The Vigilance unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy blasts, picking off the alien drones one by one. Their cloaking devices proved no match for the advanced sensors of the Vigilance, and within moments, the first wave of attackers was neutralized. But the second wave was even more dangerous. These were the alien warships. Cloaked and deadly, they moved silently through space, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Vigilance could not afford to be caught off guard. The crew worked with precision as Captain Grant ordered evasive maneuvers, guiding the ship through a series of unpredictable paths that would confuse the incoming alien warships as they closed in on their target. The Vigilance fired its weapons once again, targeting the enemy warships with deadly precision. Each shot hit with accuracy, disabling the alien ships one by one. The human ship's advanced weaponry made short work of the aliens' attempts to retaliate, but the aliens were persistent and their attacks relentless. As the final wave of attackers arrived, Captain Grant knew the time had come for the ultimate test. She ordered the Vigilance to engage in a full-throttle pursuit of the remaining alien ships. Their speed was no match for the human warship. As the Vigilance closed in on the last of the alien forces, Captain Grant led her crew on a final decisive strike. She wouldn't stop until the remaining alien fleet was obliterated, and the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a target, it was the hunter. The Vigilance blasted through the remaining alien defenses with explosive force, and by the time the smoke cleared, the alien strike forces had been decimated. The Vigilance stood victorious, its weapons still humming with the energy of the battle. But Captain Grant knew better than to believe this was the end. It was just the beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not fall without a fight. But the war was far from over. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Vigilance had secured a hard-fought victory against the alien strike forces. But Captain Grant knew that the true challenge lay ahead. The Xar Khan fleet had been crippled, but they were far from destroyed. Their pride had been wounded, and they would stop at nothing to exact their revenge on the humans. The Vigilance had proven its strength, but the aliens were not a race to be underestimated. For a brief moment, there was silence aboard the Vigilance. The crew worked quickly to assess the damage, making repairs and checking their weapons and shields. The atmosphere in the command center was tense but focused. Captain Grant allowed herself a moment of relief as she looked out at the stars, but she knew it was only temporary. The calm before the storm. Solace, the ship's AI, projected a series of tactical assessments onto the large screen in front of her. Captain Grant reviewed the data, her face hardening as she saw the enemy reinforcements gathering in the distance. The aliens were preparing for a final assault, and it would be far more devastating than anything they had faced so far. "They're coming," Captain Grant said quietly to herself, but the crew heard her nonetheless. They had seen the readings and knew what it meant. The Xar Khan were mobilizing everything they had left. The Vigilance's victory against the strike forces had been a mere delay. The true fight was just beginning. The crew of the Vigilance had fought with everything they had, but they were facing a nearly endless supply of alien forces. The Vigilance had given humanity hope, but there was still so much more to overcome. The battle for Earth was only one part of a much larger conflict, one that stretched across the stars. Captain Grant stood, making her way to the command center's large viewing window. She looked out into the void of space, her mind racing with the possibilities. What would the alien fleet do next? Would humanity be able to fight back again? Or would this be the end of the line? What's our next move? The voice of her first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Klein, broke through her thoughts. Captain Grant turned, her expression resolute. "We prepare for the worst," she said firmly. "We know what they're capable of now, and we won't be caught off guard again." She paused for a moment, taking in the gravity of the situation. "We need to hit them first, before they can strike back with everything they have. We take the fight to them." The crew nodded in agreement, their faces set with determination. They had been trained for this, and now the moment had come to put everything they had learned to the test. The Vigilance was humanity's best hope, and they couldn't afford to fail. The ship powered up as the crew prepared to engage the alien fleet. Once more Solace fed Captain Grant the latest tactical information as the ship accelerated toward the enemy reinforcements. Captain Grant had a plan, one that could potentially cripple the remaining Xar Khan fleet before they had a chance to retaliate. The tension was palpable as the Vigilance moved silently toward the alien forces. Captain Grant's hands gripped the controls firmly. She would not let humanity fall. Not without a fight. The aliens may have underestimated them before, but they would make no such mistake now. The Vigilance was more than just a warship. It was the symbol of humanity's will to survive, and it would not back down. The time for waiting was over. The time for the ultimate confrontation had arrived. The Vigilance was ready to lead humanity in the final stand against the alien invaders. The Vigilance cut through the cold expanse of space, its engines glowing bright as it surged toward the alien reinforcements. Captain Grant's mind was focused, the weight of the upcoming battle pressing down on her. She knew that this was humanity's last chance to strike the Xar Khan before they could regroup and launch their full-scale assault. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and there was no turning back. The tactical display in front of her glowed with data from Solace. The alien fleet was massive, but the Vigilance had an advantage: speed and precision. Captain Grant had always trusted her crew, and now, with everything on the line, she knew they could execute their plan flawlessly. The ship was built for this moment, and the crew had been forged in the heat of combat. "Status report," she commanded, her voice calm, but tinged with the urgency of the situation. "All systems are operational," Lieutenant Klein responded from her station, her fingers flying over the console. "Shields at 90%. weapons charged and ready, and our cloaking system is online. We're ready for the assault." "Good," Captain Grant replied. "We go in hard. No hesitation. The Vigilance strikes first, and we don't stop until we've crippled their ability to retaliate." She paused for a moment, locking eyes with her crew. "This is it. We give everything we have, or we don't give anything at all." The crew nodded, their faces filled with determination. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about the Vigilance or the ship's reputation. This was about the survival of their people, the survival of Earth itself. As they neared the alien fleet, Captain Grant ordered the ship to cloak completely. The Vigilance slipped into the shadows. Invisible to the alien sensors, Solace's advanced algorithms tracked the enemy ships, pinpointing weaknesses and identifying potential vulnerabilities. Captain Grant's heart raced in anticipation. She could feel the hum of the ship's engines beneath her feet, and she knew the Vigilance was ready to strike. "Engage evasive maneuvers," Captain Grant ordered as the ship dove into the heart of the alien formation. The Vigilance moved with incredible speed, darting between enemy ships, using the stars and debris as cover. The alien fleet had no idea what hit them. The Vigilance unleashed a devastating barrage of missiles, targeting the weaker, less protected ships in the rear of the enemy formation. Explosions erupted across the alien fleet as the missiles found their marks. The Vigilance moved fluidly, evading return fire from the alien warships. As the crew worked in perfect synchronization, they knew exactly when to fire, when to evade, and when to hold their ground. The first wave of alien ships fell quickly, disintegrating into clouds of debris and fire. But the aliens were quick to adapt. They responded with a ferocity that only a wounded and desperate fleet could manage. The remaining warships closed in, their weapons firing relentlessly, trying to overwhelm the Vigilance. With sheer numbers, Captain Grant gritted her teeth as the ship shuddered under the impact of enemy blasts. But the Vigilance held strong. Its advanced shields absorbed the damage, and the ship kept moving, faster and more precise than the aliens could react. "Target their command ships," Captain Grant ordered. "Take out their leadership and the rest will crumble." The crew sprang into action, focusing all their firepower on the largest, most heavily armored alien ships. The Vigilance fired with deadly accuracy, its energy beams cutting through the alien ship's defenses like a hot knife through butter. One by one, the alien command vessels began to fall, their once strong shields collapsing under the relentless barrage. As the last of the alien command ships detonated in a brilliant flash, the remaining Sarkon ships began to retreat. They had lost their leadership, their coordinated tactics broken. Captain Grant's strategy had worked. Without their command structure, the aliens were disorganized, vulnerable to further attacks. "The battle is ours," Lieutenant Klein said, her voice filled with disbelief and relief. But Captain Grant knew that it wasn't over yet. The aliens had been dealt a crushing blow, but they would regroup, and the war would continue. For now, however, humanity had secured its victory. "Set course for Earth," Captain Grant ordered. "We've won the first battle, but this war isn't over yet. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." The crew nodded in unison, their resolve as strong as ever. As the Vigilance began its journey back toward home, they knew the fight was far from over, but they had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and they would fight to the very end to protect their world. The hunt had only just begun, and Captain Grant and her crew were ready to lead humanity's charge into the future. The Vigilance cruised silently through the void of space, the battle now behind them, but the scars of the war still fresh. Captain Grant stood on the bridge, her eyes focused on the stars ahead. The ship had returned to the edge of Earth's orbit, its crew exhausted but victorious. The fight was far from over, but for the first time since the war began, there was a glimmer of hope in the air. Humanity had taken a stand, and the universe had felt it. "Earth is in sight," Lieutenant Klein reported from her station. The screen flickered, showing the blue and green planet that had been the heart of this conflict. It was a symbol of everything they had fought for. The crew of the Vigilance had given everything, and now they had made it home, but the battle had left its mark on them. Captain Grant knew the victory wasn't just a triumph for the Vigilance or for humanity's military power. It was a victory for the spirit of humankind, that indomitable will to fight against impossible odds and refuse to back down when every other option seemed lost. She thought of the soldiers who had fallen in the skirmishes, the families who had lost loved ones, and the countless lives that had been disrupted by the alien invasion. And now, their enemies had been repelled. But for how long? Status update on the alien fleet. Captain Grant asked, turning to Solace. The ship's alien forces are retreating. Solace responded, however, based on current projections, it is unlikely that this is their final withdrawal. More reinforcements are likely in the coming months. Our military forces on Earth are not yet fully prepared for another assault, but the Vigilance's success has been a powerful morale boost. Captain Grant exhaled slowly. She had known that their victory was only a temporary one. The Xar Khan were not a species that would simply give up. They would come again. And when they did, humanity would need to be ready. We won't stop training, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. We'll be ready for them next time. The crew knew what she meant. They had seen firsthand the devastation the alien forces were capable of, and they understood the gravity of the situation. The Vigilance had bought humanity time. But that time would not last forever. Captain Grant had always known that the true cost of victory was the commitment to continue fighting. Captain, Lieutenant Klein spoke up. What about the message we sent? Have we heard back from the other colonies? Her voice was full of curiosity and concern. The Vigilance had transmitted a distress signal to all human colonies during the battle, hoping to alert them to the threat and prepare for the possibility of a larger war. Captain Grant's expression softened as she glanced at the screen showing the distant colonies scattered throughout the galaxy. We've received responses from several of the colonies, she said, her voice steady. They're preparing their defenses as best as they can. We're not alone in this war. Not anymore. A ripple of relief passed through the crew at the news. The fight for Earth had drawn humanity together, but the realization that others were ready to fight alongside them made the burden feel less overwhelming. For the first time since the war began, the crew of the Vigilance allowed themselves a moment of optimism. We've shown the galaxy who we are, Captain Grant continued, her eyes fixed on the planet below. And when they come back, they'll know they're not facing a planet of victims. They're facing a species that will never back down. The crew stood in silence for a moment, taking in the enormity of the situation. But as the Vigilance orbited Earth, they knew something fundamental had changed. The legacy of humanity had been forged in the fires of war, and it would carry forward into the future. Prepare the ship for a new mission, Captain Grant said, her voice resolute. Humanity has a future in this galaxy, and we're going to make sure we have a place in it. The Vigilance may have been the ship that led the charge, but it was the spirit of humanity itself that would guide them in the years to come. The alien threat may not be gone, but the hope for a future where humanity could rise to any challenge had never been brighter. As the Vigilance began to descend toward Earth, Captain Grant knew this was only the beginning. The war had taken its toll, but humanity had survived, and from that survival, they would build a legacy that would echo across the stars.